Well, good evening, all. Shalom, and friends and new friends that we are meeting tonight as Indigenous Friends of Israel International. What a wonderful gathering and very gifted. We are blessed with very gifted and speakers here tonight, and one of them will include my beautiful wife. So I just want to welcome each one of you. Look, please stay muted until after the Zoom meeting tonight. But also, I would ask you that through the speakers as they share, that we'll have a question Q&A at the end of it, and if we could please direct those questions specifically to what will be shared here tonight. So the first speaker that I'm going to bring on tonight is my beautiful wife, Barbara. Barbara is a sociologist, author, former psychologist, and teacher. As co-founder of Indigenous Friends of Israel International, she is spearheading an anti-Semitism project in Australian schools. I believe that has the potential to go international. We are at a crisis point regarding anti-Semitism, and she is working with Eli, Jill, and Shoshana on this groundbreaking project. So I won't say any more. I will bring Barbara on right now. But there's one scripture I should say through the prophet Isaiah. He said, "Woe to those who call evil good and good evil, who put darkness for light and light for darkness, who put bitter for sweet and sweet for bitter." So thank you, Barbara.
Well, it's wonderful to be here tonight, and I have got speaker view on, so I'll click it again, but because I can see Eli and Jill. But look, wonderful to be here tonight. And I want to say the first question is, who are we? So Indigenous Friends of Israel International was set up in 2017 to stand with the Jewish people and assert that they are the Indigenous people of Israel. And also, we are expressing the voice of Indigenous people internationally regarding education and advocacy for Israel. So this includes a public education program where we do the monthly seminars, we put out press releases, newsletters, videos, we cover most forms of social media. So it's a very active education program that we have. Now, separate from that is that we have a school anti-Semitism education program, which is our topic tonight. And that focuses on anti-Semitism in Australia, not specifically on Israel. So I wanted to address firstly, what is the problem? So I'm going to go to the view again here. Try that one. Okay. All right. So what is the problem that we are facing in our nation at this time? So whether you agree with it or not, we live in a nation that has adopted Judeo-Christian values. And these are that all people are equal, that we have the right to life and to live safely with the best medical treatment and education our society can offer. We believe in the values of human dignity and human decency, of respecting each other and not abusing one another, certainly not harassing one another and doing property damage and threatening to kill one another. We live in a democracy where the rule of law prevails. We can vote, we can stand for elections, we can influence government policy, and be protected by the law when people break it. And that is what it's meant to be. We have religious freedom, freedom of speech and association. We do not want this freedom, dearly won, that our soldiers fought and died for, to degenerate into hate speech. However, we have a situation where people of different values have migrated here or are children of migrants who have un-Australian values. Some have brought their anti-Semitism with them. We also have people here whose families have been born here for generations, who have adopted cultural Marxist and neo-Nazi values of anti-Semitism, which is detrimental to our social cohesion. Some of these have come through our universities, all have come through our schools, which is why we are focusing this project on our schools. So we are approaching it with the values of respect, tolerance, compassion, and empathy. If we have people in our nation who hate our values, who hate our nation, who hate our way of life, then we are in trouble in our nation. This is tearing the fabric of our nation apart. We don't want our children to grow up hating one another or hating one section of our society, even hating our nation. This is un-Australian. So, what are they teaching in our schools? There is a Teachers for Palestine group who are festering hatred of Jews in our schools and wearing keffers to school. This is the tip of the iceberg and is intimidating to Jewish teachers and students, not to mention what they might be teaching in the classroom. Now, not all teachers are like that, but some are, and we need to be aware of that. Jewish children need security guards at their schools and are frightened to wear their uniforms to school. Jewish university students and lecturers have been terrorised on campuses, and 2 universities have established safe places for Jewish students. Many of these students now learn from home. The streets of our major cities are no longer safe for Jews, with anti-Israel protesters, angry mobs, taking over sections of the city on weekends for the last 16 months now. They seem to be able to act with impunity. We have a New South Wales-based Nurses and Midwives for Palestine group who have members actively chanting the genocidal chant of "From the river to the sea" at work and in their uniforms and wearing pro-Palestine badges at work. The latest was the horrifying incident of 2 nurses at Bankstown Hospital who said they would not treat Israeli Jewish patients, that in fact they would kill them and have done so already. Absolutely horrifying. So far they have not even been charged, although we know that they have been dismissed and no longer able to work in their profession. They are hiding in hospital at the moment and refusing to be interviewed by police. So this is frightening for Jewish people, that the fear that they would not be able to be treated safely in hospitals. Since October 7, with the worst massacre of Jews and others in Israel since the Holocaust or Shoah, along with the rape, torture, burning of babies, and the war crime of kidnapping and torturing hostages, many still in captivity by Hamas and other terror groups, there has been a surge in anti-Semitism worldwide. We saw it in Australia with the incident at the Sydney Opera House, where it was to be lit up as a memorial to the Jews who had been killed, and the Jews were told to stay home for their own safety, while the police escorted the pro-Palestinian angry mob to the destination as and the mob called out, "Gas the Jews and kill the Jews," most horrifically. And this was even before Israel had acted in self-defense against the October 7 massacre. No one has been held to account for that, as you know. Since then, anti-Semitism has festered, with the Adass Israel Synagogue in Melbourne firebombed, graffiti on and demonstrations outside synagogues, firebombing of cars and businesses, a caravan, and we also know graffiti on Jewish homes, synagogues, and a childcare centre. A caravan of explosives has been found with Jewish targets named inside it. So there is fear of a mass casualty event, and where Jews and other Australians could be killed. So this is a crime issue as well as a safety issue in our nation. It's an issue that affects us all, but obviously mostly the Jewish community. The government and police have lost control of our streets and are trying to play catch up. So this is not just a matter of protecting one group of Australians from racism and discrimination, though this is crucial. It is also a matter of protecting our nation from falling apart and from self-destruction. It is dealing with a threat to who we are as a nation and who we are as a people. This is fundamental and a threat to our civilization. So what is the solution? Well, our program that we are in the process of developing, the school's anti-Semitism project, is obviously only one solution. However, it is a very important solution because our children are the future leaders of our society. They are the ones that go on to be teachers, doctors, nurses, businessmen, politicians, running our universities, etc. And so it is really important that we see what is happening in our education system, that we see what our children are exposed to, and we provide alternatives that are bringing a more healthy society for our nation. So I know that Jill and Eli and Shoshana will bring more on this, but I'll just mention briefly that we are developing units from grade 1 to grade 10 that fit in with the national curriculum, particularly in the area of history and civics. We are grateful to be working with Shoshana Lene, an experienced curriculum writer and childhood education expert, on this. We don't have financial support for this program, but hope to attract it in future to print resources, etc. One resource we have developed is a children's book on Aboriginal William Cooper. As well as working for the uplift of his people, he also led the Australian Aborigines League in 1938 in a protest, the only private one worldwide, for a group of people that has been disenfranchised in their nation. But he led that to the German consulate in Melbourne at Kristallnacht, protesting the cruel treatment of our Jewish people in Europe. So Shoshana and I have written a children's book, mostly focused towards grade 3 and 4, that have the story of William Cooper in a relatable level for that age group. And Shoshana is building a resource, a unit around that. So I've actually written 3 books on William Cooper, and pleased to co-write this children's book with Shoshana. So it has been an incredible blessing to work with Jill and Eli Rabinowitz of the We Are Here Foundation in Perth. They have been working very successfully with schools in Australia, particularly Perth and also South Africa, for a couple of years on a program based around the In My Pocket resource. So they are Jewish educators, and that particular program is for grade 5 and grade 6. And basically, it's the story of Dorothy Sim and the Kinder Transport, where 10,000 children, mostly Jewish, were evacuated from Nazi Germany just in time before the war to the UK, which basically saved their lives. Unfortunately, many of them were not able to see their parents again who had perished in the Holocaust. But obviously, this story is being treated gently because of the age group of the children, but it gives an opportunity for the children to explore issues of refugees, displacement, etc. So the We Are Here Foundation, doing this wonderful work, have received funding from the German Embassy in Canberra and the German Consulate in Perth and the Goethe Institute, which is wonderful. So Eli and Jill's program is not based on the theme of anti-Semitism. It is based on kindness, compassion and tolerance. We have reframed the work that they have done into an anti-Semitism resource for grades 5 and 6 and grades 1 and 2, and we are making it available to schools throughout Australia. Jill and Eli teach face-to-face, so their reach is limited by that, but we are making it available so that teachers anywhere in Australia will be equipped to teach it, and Shoshana has done an amazing job with this. So what is important is that this is not indoctrination, but we'll use an inquiry method. As the children look at the experience of Dorothy and the other children as refugees or displaced people, they can be asked questions along the way. What would it be like for you if? What toy would you take with you? What thoughts would be running through your mind, etc. And this is really important because education is not about indoctrination, but about drawing out from students, helping them to think, helping them to question, helping them to process information, etc. So there will be activities that engage the children, including painting or drawing about what their impressions are along the way, like what would it be like for you if? And relatable to the children at their level, they can draw how it's speaking to their heart, how it's speaking to their mind, and in a way that really touches them and speaks to them. And so it won't be a heavy experience, but one that will be simple but profound. It will be gentle but powerful, and will help build compassion and tolerance. I see the William Cooper story helping children to realise that sometimes people do not see the results of their contribution to society in their lifetime, like Cooper and Martin Luther King Jr., but they can make a platform on which future generations can build, and their dreams can be realised now or later. We want children to discover that they have a hope and a future. And discover is a really important word here because we want them to discover what their values are. We want them to, the teachers, to provide a safe environment where children can discover their values. So who is supporting this project? We have recently returned from the Australia-Israel Allies Caucus relaunch in Canberra at Parliament House, and so we had quite a lot of interest there. In My Pocket, that Eli and Jill are doing, and also in the overall project that we are working on. And this was from Andrew Wallace, the chair of the caucus. It was also from Dr. Mike Kelly, co-founder of Labour Friends of Israel. Also from John Lockwood, who is the chair of the Israel Allies Foundation, Australasia. Also from Senator Sarah Henderson, the Shadow Education Minister, and others. And separately to that event, we visited the German embassy in Canberra, who are already supportive of In My Pocket and quite interested to see that we have expanded on the wonderful work that Jill and Eli are doing. So we will be approaching History Teachers Association, other relevant bodies who may be interested. We are also approaching some critical friends who may give us some expert feedback as well. So timeline, pilot and launch. We are in the process of contacting schools to run a pilot program for grades 5 and 6 and grades 1 and 2. If you know any teachers or schools interested, particularly teachers of history and civics, but there may be others, we would really love you to get in touch with us about that, or in touch with the school and link them in with us. As well, we are looking at state schools, Christian schools, Jewish schools, School of the Air, home schools, etc., right around Australia, so that we can have a good spread of schools. The feedback that comes in from that will be fed to Shoshana to make any adjustments if necessary, and then we will have a big launch. And I'm hoping that it will be possible for us to do some in-service training at some stage, whether face-to-face or by Zoom, live or recorded, as an extra resource for teachers who may be interested. So what you can do and what next? You can help by getting the word out. Praying if you are a person of prayer, calling out anti-Semitism where you see it in schools, providing funding, linking us to teachers and schools who might be interested in pilot projects, etc. So this is not the only example I can give, but in closing, I want to give the example of Dr. Randa Abdul Fattah. Some of you may have heard what's happened there. She's at Macquarie University, has a 1.8 million grant and research grant. She focuses on Islamophobia, critical race theory, Palestine, the war on terror, and Arab and Muslim activism. She took a group of children onto Sydney University and had them chanting "From the River to the Sea" and jihad. Randa created Australia's first early reader book series on diversity and anti-racism. This series is called Our Stories, and the 4 books in that series, including Randa's, which is written by diverse writers and illustrators, including Randa's book called The Very Best Donut, were shortlisted for the DANZ 2004 Book Award, Diversity Australia and New Zealand. So I think that is a concern. She was recently at the so-called anti-racism conference at QUT, which has been investigated by the inquiry into universities, anti-Semitism, because there she said that she was calling other lecturers white supremacists, and that she was flouting the rules of her research grant, etc. So there's possibly an investigation into that. Education Minister Jason Clare has asked for that investigation to occur. But this whole thing about these readers, which I've not had an opportunity to have a look at yet, but I will, is very concerning. We need to read what our children are exposed to and call out what is not appropriate. We need to find or develop readers that for our children, that won't be divisive, that will encourage social cohesion and will encourage our children to be proud of being Australian and to treat all citizens well and respectfully. We need to help our teachers with units and resources that will enable them to do their jobs well in bringing the next generation through our school system. These children will be our future leaders. We need to guide them to be happy, compassionate, tolerant members of our society. So thank you very much for listening to me.
Thank you, Barbara. We can all make that difference. Now I will bring on the next two speakers, Jill and Eli Rabinovich of the We Are Here Foundation have spent the past 2 years educating thousands of upper primary school children in Australia and also South Africa. They're in My Pocket project is about 7-year-old Dorith Sims escaped from danger from Germany to Scotland in July in 1939. In My Pocket is a free 2-hour workshop of a book reading with creative art. I now hand you over to Jill and Eli. Thank you.
Thank you, Barbara and Norm. Hello, everybody. I'm from Perth, not South Africa. Jill is the one that does all the presentation. She's a retired English high school teacher. I'm just a brass salesman, but I press the buttons and I find people like the Germans and I get people to print books and things like that. It's a good combination. What we've done today is just done a synopsis of our presentation, a short one, so you can see Jill in action and you can just see the children in action, because it's very much something that you get this connection between Jill and these, if you want to call it 10-year-old kids, these kids in year 5 and 6. And they're fabulous kids. I've got to say that we're very blessed to work with kids in primary school as opposed to high school, from what I hear. Although we've got 2 aged sons who are long past that. But they are fabulous kids. And that's why when we discovered the story, and Dorith, as Norm has said, she herself was 7.5, it is something that these kids absolutely understand and relate to. And we believe that with the art project, they walk out being real Jewish, real mensches or mensch, a good person. Not that they weren't before, but it is very much the foundation of what we feel Australia needs. And unfortunately, when you tackle kids at the age of 15 or 16 and send them into the Holocaust centers, and we've seen this in action, you may have left it too late. And that is an argument that we're using. We need a foundation of younger children. And in discussing this with Shoshana and Barbara, there's no doubt that we've hit the mark there. We've done in the last 2 years, in the last year of those 2 years, about 34 schools, 71 classes, over 2,000 students. And I've got to say that the schools in Western Australia, and they are government schools or private schools, Catholic schools, there's one Jewish school, they've all virtually welcomed us to come and do this project. And today, Notre Dame School confirmed that they want to do it again. Now,
third time.
For the third time this term, right? So they can't wait to do it again. So I can just say that this kind of project has got a lot of gold at the end of the rainbow, okay? And I think we also have to, besides the educators, I think those are the most important people for us, but our biggest challenge will be the people who think they know it all, the politicians. Even the politicians on our side, they've got closed ears. They're not willing to hear what we have to offer them. They just want to hear their own voices. I'm sorry to be negative, but that's how the real world is out there. So we're going to continue doing our stuff in Western Australia, and we love working with you to build a bigger project that incorporates anti-Semitism in it, because ours is simpler. It's about kindness and about empathy, and kids of 10 years old get that very easily, but there's absolutely no problem in explaining that. So I don't know if Jill wants to say a few words, and then we'll just show you.
Yes, our project is a 2-hour incursion. So we go into the schools with everything that the children need to do the project. We've had funding from 4 city councils already here in Perth. So that's why we're able to take all the art equipment and pay for the books and pay for the calico pockets that need to be made for the art section. This is very attractive to the schools, that they don't actually have to supply anything except newspaper to cover the students' desks. So we start off with explaining about the history behind what happened in 1939. I just very briefly touch on what was happening in Germany, and we're going to show you a short clip of what I say to the children. As we said earlier, these are just snippets of what we actually do. We obviously can't do a 2-hour workshop with you. So let's show that first video.
So this is the tricky part. Share. Okay. I think that's it. Let's double click. Okay.
To the beginning.
To
the beginning.
Yeah. It's from start. Can you see that on your screen? Screens? Yes. Barbara?
Yes.
Okay, great. Okay, so this first little clip is when Jill introduces the story to the kids. This is a typical state school in Western Australia.
These were year 5 children at Caversham Valley Primary School.
Okay, so we'll play this little clip first.
Today you're going to hear a story. It's a true story that took place 85 years ago, just before World War II broke out in Europe. That is 1939. And as I said, it's a true story about children your age, even younger, to babies who had to flee their homeland, which was Germany, because a war was looming. They were in great danger. So these children were refugees sent to leave their homeland. Now, back in England, which was
That's not good.
Is everyone muted?
It's just our problem here.
You know Murphy's Law? Well, that's just happened.
This is the NBN that we all pay the fortune for,
Apologies.
folks.
So I'm talking about the background to the story. After that, we go into the actual story itself. We don't give everybody their free copies of the In My Pocket book at this stage, because I don't want the children to actually be looking down and looking at the book. So the PowerPoint, which you can see behind me there, is page by page of the story, which we go through, and I discuss everything that happens in the story like that. So Dorothy has written about her experiences. That's how it works. It's about how she leaves her homeland, she says goodbye to her parents, how she cries on the station, how she's alone on the boat, and she doesn't know anybody. It's very frightening and scary. As we're going along, I'm asking the children how they would respond, how they would feel at the same time. These are refugee children who are leaving their homeland and escaping from danger, going to somewhere else that they don't know the language, they don't know the customs, the culture. So we very much have a connection with the refugees that the children have heard about. Some of them know in their classroom, some of their friends have been refugees as well. I like to focus on that, how the refugee can become resilient, and the attitudes that their friends, their new friends, can have around them to help them get over what they've been through, and how friendship and kindness and empathy and compassion can help you in extraordinary situations that you might know that you're experiencing, or that the children around you are experiencing. So that is our main focus for the In My Pocket project. After we've read the story, we then go on to a video that was made by the Edinburgh University, and it's sort of a summary of the story, and I hope we're going to be able to play it for you.
At this point, it doesn't look very good. I'm out here in the desert like the Israelites. But Jill, keep talking.
Yes. Well, I mean, we have to show
Yes.
something.
Okay. Unless we try and solve this problem and Shoshana goes on before us. But
So I'll go on to show you that after we've discussed the story and we've watched the short little contemporary video of the book itself, we then go on to show background about Dorothy herself. So it will be pictures of her as a little girl in her German classroom before she had to leave to go and live in England. We show pictures of her family, what she looks like with her red bow, which is very important to the story. She wears a red bow. It becomes her identity. And I like to focus on that because everybody, every child has something that's important to them. And that is typical of their identity. In this case, it's Dorothy's red bow, as well as a toy dog that she had with her right throughout her whole childhood. Also in the story, she meets her new family and they've got a real dog. So we make the connection how the dog could be a symbol of the family that she's left behind and her new family that she's moved into, the beautiful people that have taken her in and become her adoptive parents. So as part of, again, which we would have shown you, the PowerPoint that we show is a short clip actually of King Charles when he visits the German Parliament and he makes a speech about the Kindertransport. So I like to show that because it shows not just the children, but the teachers as well, that this Kindertransport is grounded in history and saving children's lives has been going on for a very long time. In this case, it was the British that saved these children. We end with a little clip of Dorothy herself talking about bigotry. And I explain that to the children at the very end before we then go on to discussing the meaning of the story and how it resonates with each and every individual child. It can be anything from, it showed me how friendship is so important. It showed me how to be kind to people, how acceptance and inclusiveness is very much part of the Australian landscape, especially in a multicultural classroom. I don't ever, as Eli said, and as Barbara said, we don't say anything about anti-Semitism at all. That now with Shoshana developing the new program, that'll be dealt with in Shoshana's work. But we don't touch on that at all. And my focus is on inclusiveness as a general term to incorporate everybody in a classroom, because as you can see just in front of you with that picture, if you've got it still there, it's all West Australian classrooms are multicultural. People from all over are present in our classrooms. So the art component is what the children create in response to the story. It's specifically the symbol of the pocket.
Recording in progress.
sorry, I've just come onto the mobile phone so that I can reboot our computer. Can you hear Jill on this phone? Can you hear Aris?
But I can continue talking. You can hear me?
There's feedback coming through.
Okay. I'm going to
Yes,
go on.
They can hear you.
Okay, you can hear me.
Can you hear Jill on the mobile phone? Because I'm going to reboot the computer.
I need somebody to say yes so that I.
Up, if you can
Yes,
hear.
I can hear you.
Yes, yes.
Okay, thank you. So back to
If Jill's talking, I can't hear her. Hello, Eli.
I can't hear either.
Eli, we can't hear. Hello, Eli, this is not working. We can't hear Jill.
I think in the process of trying to reboot the computer, it might have disconnected from Zoom.
Hello?
I don't know what's happened.
I don't know. It's something to do with Jill being on the mobile phone is not working. So Lillian, can you send a message to Eli and Jill that we cannot hear Jill, please?
Pastor Barbara, I think they are asking you to unmute them. I'm not sure what is the problem. Perhaps they cannot find the mute or unmute button on their mobile.
Like they can't find the unmute button. No.
They just have to tap the screen.
Yeah,
Let's just have to tap the screen and then unmute.
yeah, the host can unmute them.
Can you hear us yet?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, yes,
Now
we
you
can.
At
can.
last. Okay, sorry, somebody else we've been muted. Somebody else had to do that, but thank you very much. Okay, I wanted to talk to you about the art project that we bring in afterwards that we have created that helps to resonate with the story with the children. And we use specifically the symbol of the pocket so that the children can understand, first of all, symbolism and how the pocket represents the feelings and the emotions of a child that would have to go through this process of leaving home and going to a new place. So I just want to show you what a blank pocket looks like. It's made of calico, and we have wonderful volunteers who make the calico pockets for us. And we, as I said, we provide all the paints and everything that they need, and they choose an aspect of the story that particularly resonated with them. Usually by this stage, we've given them their own copies of the book, and they choose a page from the book, from the story that they would like to paint themselves. I insist that everybody has to have a image of the bow, because the bow is a symbol of love in the story, and it weaves its way right through the story, starting off with her parents who put the bow into her hair. She had this red bow. Red is the color of love, and how right through the story the bow represents the little girl's feelings and also the reader's feelings as she approaches each new stage of her journey to safety in England. And by the very last page of the story, the red bow is glowing again and showing how she's been accepted with her new friends and how there's love and security in her life again. So this, for example, is one of the pockets that somebody did. You can see she's focused very much, the girl who did this, on the red bow itself. And the background is from a picnic that the children had when they got off the train in Holland. And they were given food and nourishment. So there's a lot in the story. In fact, on every page, we see acts of kindness by people towards these children and towards each other. And that is a very important aspect that I like to bring out when I'm talking about the themes of the story. Here's another, I'm just going to show you a few pockets that people have, mainly children, have drawn theirs in my pocket. That's Dorothy on the boat. This is one from the very last page when she's reading the last letter that she gets from her parents. And here's another one of children dancing. It's an important part of the story when we see how Dorothy is accepted by her new Scottish friends, because in Germany, she wasn't allowed to play in the street because she was Jewish. And here she is now. Everybody's accepting her. So I make a big thing about the inclusiveness and the holding hands of the children in a circle of friendship, accepting her for who she is. Doesn't matter what her background is, doesn't matter where she comes from. So that aspect of the story, of the project takes the full second part, the second hour. And afterwards, at the end, we take a class photo of everybody holding up their pockets. We also have what's called a reflection card. So this is for the teachers' follow-up work, so we don't just come in a vacuum and then walk out again. They have work to do where they can give the children a reflection artist statement card where they're going to explain why they painted what they did, what the story meant to them, what they learned from the story about friendship and inclusiveness. And then at the end, we also give everybody a personal certificate of participation. I get the names of all the students and I, with calligraphy writing, make everybody their own participation certificate. The response has been very good, as Eli said. Last year alone, I think I must have spoken to at least 2,500 children, mostly in school. And we have also given our program to schools in Melbourne and Sydney that have wanted to do the program themselves because we haven't been able to get there. At this stage, it's been the Jewish day schools there. And although now, this week, we've had quite a few inquiries from small little schools in country towns here, and it's not difficult. I could easily explain to them, and I've got it all on the website anyway, how to go page by page, what to talk about, and then we'll send them the pockets and they can do the painting themselves. So it isn't a daunting process at all for teachers. So we're hoping that more teachers will come on board once they hear from their fellow teachers about the program. I think that's about it for now, seeing that we couldn't show you anything else. Sorry about that. These things happen and they test us, don't they?
Okay, that was absolutely wonderful, Jill and Eli. So appreciate your presentation and the wonderful work you're doing. So over
Thank
to
you.
Norman.
Very, very the importance there of just many of the things that you've shown shared, both of you. A wonderful, wonderful presentation, and now education is certainly the key. But we in Australia, right throughout the schools, and all the work that you and Eli are doing, we want to see that red glow again. Red bow glow again.
Yes, the red bow
And
glow. I love
yeah,
that.
and it's that love and that kindness and that acceptance. So we thank you for how you brought that across. Very important. And I know there will be many questions after this, before we finish. Thank you, Jill and Eli.
Thank
The
you.
next speaker I would love to bring on is Shoshana Linan.
Can
Is
we
an
mute us
experienced
now?
primary school educator, a curriculum writer for government and organisations, and an advocate for Israel. As a lifelong learner, she recently studied a Master of Arts in Child Development at the University of Haifa, Israel. Shoshana has organized numerous tours to Israel from Australia, and I now bring you on Shoshana Linane. Thank you, Shoshana.
Thank you so much, Norman and Barbara. Thank you to Eli and Jill for your sharing. I honestly never get sick of hearing of your passion, of your excitement, each of you for your work, Barbara for your writing, and Eli and Jill for your work within my pocket. That was a huge motivating force for me, to be honest, when I had a look at the great work you were doing. But I also saw that there was such a huge potential to expand it into so many more schools around our nation, and as Barbara said, potentially internationally. What I'm going to share is that, in coming alongside and working with this beautiful team, I did do some research firstly to ensure that the curriculum that we put together is founded on sound principles about what is understood about anti-Semitism today. Not so much linked with Holocaust education, although there is quite a lot of that research that's coming out of Germany, Austria, etc. But what I was really focusing on when I did my own literature scan was actually what is done overseas in educational research regarding schools and they're dealing with anti-Semitism. And of course, as was all unfolding, and so, Indigenous Friends of Israel International was growing this schools project, as we know, well known now, and as Barbara outlined, almost daily now we're having horrific anti-Semitic acts happening in our own communities here in Australia. So there's never a better time than now, and it really is a critical project which we are working very hard to get up and going, as Barbara outlined. Now, in my sharing, I would like to first of all give an overview of what some current research is saying about what's important in education about anti-Semitism. And I want to say it's actually still very scant in its research on the ground, because as quick as all of these events are unfolding and happening, there are a number of studies that are literally happening as we speak. However, when I had a look at, say, some peer-reviewed articles from studies from, say, Austria, from Germany, from Scotland, it was very interesting because some of their key elements are what we are being quite explicit about and intentional about in these curriculum units. So this is my plan in my sharing. I will do an overview for 5 minutes of the current research and how that's informed our curriculum units. And then I'm going to talk about what does our curriculum units actually make up of, and how does it build on the beautiful work that Eli and Jill have already done in WA and also in South Africa and some schools in Melbourne and Sydney, as they've mentioned. Now, it's important, first of all, that why Jill and Eli's project really, really grabbed me was that this is a real life story about a little girl aged 7.5 named Dorothy Sims. And straight away, I saw the appeal not only for older children, but for the youngest of our children. And so I looked into the research, because initially some factors that put teachers off delving into this area overseas was being afraid of upsetting the children, being afraid of upsetting parents, backlash, to their school leadership. And yet, interestingly, the current thinking in childhood development in this area is that we should not be shielding children from what they are hearing about and whether it's secondhand or otherwise, what they're seeing on television, that we need to be sensitively opening this up to them as a way of sensitizing them to the social and psychological problem of anti-Semitism. This is very important. Unless children are sensitized, unless they are aware that firstly it is wrong, in the units, we are making sure that we give a distinction between anti-racism versus anti-Semitism. They are two very different things, and the research overseas showed that schools tended to go down the track of anti-racism. That was easier because then it meant it was a blanket coverage over a number of races in order to be inclusive and in order to not upset any particular people group. And I do understand that. However, anti-Semitism is hatred against the Jewish people and against the nation of Israel. And we need to be explicit in this way. The research is saying that the meaning, the interpretation we give to that comment, yes, it can be developmentally appropriate for young children, but it needs to be clear to them that essentially it is hatred unwarranted against a people group, and that actually a lot of it is in our adult language is actually irrational. When we think of, and in this unit particularly that Eli and Jill talked about with year 5 and 6, and what I've expanded on is that a way to bring anti-Semitism in was that Dorothy was not allowed in Germany to play with other children on the street. Jewish children were prohibited from playing with children in the neighborhood. So we open that up to them. How would they feel if that was them? Again, we're sensitizing them to the fact of how they play with freedom in Australia. The fact that when Dorothy arrived in Scotland and was adopted by her new Scottish family, eventually that she came to see the freedom with which children could play there, with children from different cultural backgrounds. So it's very important that through a real life story at a children's level, we are able to introduce the concept of exclusion being not okay, the concept of it is our responsibility to not only be aware of it, but the research says even to young children to call it out, to actually repudiate it. And again, that can be developmentally appropriate at their level. It's going to look quite different for a child in year 1 or year 2 to a child in year 5 and 6, and then a child in secondary schooling. So I just really wanted to reinforce the fact that real life stories are powerful, and that in the research overseas, a lot of stories were done from a non-fiction basis, based on facts from world wars, from the Holocaust, for example. But what is far more powerful, to put a personal and empathetic approach to wanting children to actually understand that feelings of others, that we are all have a right to be accepted, to be loved, to be respected, is to come at it from a personalized way of remembering, of relating to Dorothy's story in this case as a little child themselves. Also, the reflective artistic response that Eli and Jill talked about, the power of critical reflection. What does this story mean to me? Why should I care about Dorothy's story? Wow, Dorothy couldn't play with other children like I can play with other children. It gets them thinking then, and this is what the research is saying, how transformation will come about in communities longer term, is that by sowing the seed in a child's heart. And to be honest, there will be always a number of children in our classrooms that have either been refugees, have been displaced, have been in home care. They will relate to Dorothy's story at a deeper level than those children perhaps who have not. But that's the power in the story of Dorothy. Linking it to civics and citizenship, as Jill mentioned, it's very powerful because it is our responsibility. Schools can't solve all the social evils, we know that. However, it is their responsibility to ensure that children who are Jewish attending schools are feeling respected and safe. And I included a video from the BBC in the UK regarding Jewish children about the age of the children that our first unit has been written for, say 9 to 10, 11-year-olds, and they were asked how they felt about anti-Semitism and how it affected them. And they talked about walking to synagogue and some of the difficulties they encountered, or even what they ate for lunch, or boys wearing the kippahs, I'm sorry, I can never pronounce it properly. Is it yarmulkes? Is that the correct way to say it? Can someone help me? Yes, Jill's nodding, thank you. On their heads, and talking about their different dress, for example. What we want children to understand is that difference is beautiful, and it's something to learn from. It's not something to ridicule, and it's not something to have a stereotype or a prejudice about. And if the children stop and think about it, it is a wonderful opportunity for teachers to bring in about the beauty of our cultures and of the way in which we live our lives to be respected and accepted. And mentioning that is, of course, the importance of educating children, including our children here, about Jewish life, about contemporary Jewish life, about children who live in Jewish communities, who go to Jewish schools, and that's a very important part of this writing. Also, the research said you must have a defined and an explicit and comprehensive definition of anti-Semitism, and it needs to be a contemporary view of anti-Semitism. Historical has a place, of course, with, say, Holocaust education, but with the primary units, we are not delving into that. Some information is provided to teachers for their own background information, so that they have a much more broader understanding of anti-Semitism coming out from that historical era. However, children are not taught about the Holocaust. It does come into the national curriculum as an elaboration, which is an optional study in Holocaust education as part of history or of civics. However, it's again not something that necessarily has to be touched on. However, what's important about these curriculum units is that we are taking the position that currently with this situation currently in our society as a whole, where Jewish people are not safe, these units are critically important and really should be mandatory in schools. That's really the position we're taking. We're also educating teachers in the units that they need to also consider their own preconceived beliefs and perceptions regarding Jewish people and Israel, and particularly in light of the current war in Gaza. So they're being challenged to actually think, how are my views, how is my position perhaps skewed towards one group or another? And I know that Barbara mentioned about pro-Palestinian positions of certain teachers and are being quite vocal about that. But the research in education says whether it is this issue of anti-Semitism or any other issue, teachers are regularly challenged to critically reflect on what they believe and why they're doing what they're doing, and how can that influence the children in front of them. So with that being said, I wanted to talk about the curriculum units. Just a couple of important things. So I mentioned about sensitization of children. That's the way forward for long-term change in a community. So they need to be personally making a connection. They need to be sensitized, and schools do need to bear a considerable responsibility when it comes to empowering students to recognize and to call out anti-Semitism. And as a part of that, in the units, there are strategic questions for teachers can ask themselves, ask the students, and also role play ways to deal with that. If a child makes a comment that is inappropriate about what they're seeing on the news or about Jewish people, that there is a way to do it through role play and through discussion that is gentle, but at the same time is honest. And we do it in a way that will help to upskill teachers as they work through the units. And as Barbara said, in the future, it really does put an emphasis on teacher in service and teacher education in universities. And that was the biggest across the board glaring need that every single research that I came across said very much lacking is teacher education, very much lacking in terms of really looking at anti-Semitism, but not, it's been dealt with as anti-racism, and that's incorrect, not dealing with it correctly as anti-Semitism. And yeah, as I said, schools can't take the responsibility for all social problems, but they actually have a duty to enable students to make sense of this problem of anti-Semitism that's about them. Because children, I had a year one child, this is an example, before Christmas. She heard me mention about Israel to another teacher in my visit, And she then turned to her friend and she said, "Oh, yes, that's about the Jewish people and what they're doing to the people in Gaza." And I didn't get to hear the rest because but I noted it. And the tone was that the Jewish people, it was all their fault. Now, this child is only 6. And for me, as we were getting underway with the writing, I was like, wow, this is absolutely essential. And the research says children are not too little for you to introduce it in a developmentally appropriate way. Where teachers have run off and they're scared to upset children or parents, they're saying, no, children are very capable to be involved in learning about social issues, even being a part of civics rights movements, which is very interesting. I'm not quite sure how I would go with that, but I certainly do believe that what they're noticing around them, they need to be talking about it, but also in a healthy way, be challenged about it. And that was also another important finding, was that through discussion, allowing children that freedom to ask their questions, learning how to ask them respectfully, but also understanding there is a boundary around that not all questions can be answered. However, the most important thing is empathy. So I'll move on to what our units look like. So excited about this and so blessed with the team of Barbara and Norman and Eli and Jill. Yes, we are establishing a critical friends that can give us feedback straight away as we're developing them. Then, of course, they will go out to our pilot schools, as Barbara mentioned. But basically, it looks like this. There are 5 showcase units. First one is for year 1 and 2, based around the In My Pocket story that Eli and Jill talked about. And it focuses on the very beginnings of looking at anti-Semitism in terms of little Dorothy not being able to play with other children. We introduce it in that way. We go into some depth about empathetic education. We actually have activities in there about building empathy in the children, about, as Barbara said, what does this mean to me? Why should I care about this? And really looking at the children being separated even from their parents on the kinder transport. For them, talking about what holidays are like for them. Was this a holiday for Dorothy? No, she needed to be safe. And so there is this gentle insistence, as Jill mentioned, about talking about what it is to be displaced due to war. So we bring in those factors as well as anti-Semitism. The next unit that comes out of In My Pocket is the one that Jill has talked about with year 5 and 6. I've built on and expanded their excellent work they've started to add anti-Semitism in there. Again, talking about the exclusion for her, and also the fact of the separation from family that was required in order for their safety, and introducing concepts, for example, for the teachers to understand about Kristallnacht, which happened around that time, and background information for teachers. As Barbara mentioned, the year 3-4 unit, which fits in best with the Australian curriculum, is really looking at the life of William Cooper, of him being Australia and perhaps even further afield forerunner to standing up against anti-Semitism, against the Jewish people in light of Kristallnacht. And that's going to be an exciting reader for aged 3 to 4. We'll have a glossary in the back of terms, and it will really bring honor, I believe, to William Cooper and his life. And in terms of not seeing the fruit of what happened, but now seeing how it will come forward, is a great message to children that we should do what's right. We should do what's right, even if we don't see it happen before our eyes. We're moving into lower secondary, year 7 and 8. I'm still deciding whether it'll be for 7 or 8 or 9 or 10, but we're looking at social media and we're looking at memes, and a lot of those, which, children in the secondary year levels are continually on their phones. We want to talk about the anti-Semitic memes that are going around. We want them to be able to be exposed to them, talk about them, what's not right about them, what is the messaging that's explicit and not explicit through those memes? How is it disrespectful? How is it putting down the Jewish people? And then a culminating activity is for them to create a meme in support of the Jewish people or in support of Israel. Because again, the research talks about in terms of transformation in thinking through that sensitization, and similarly to In My Pocket, where children are painting a pocket and thinking about those important little symbols for Dorothy, this is important symbols for our society. Our society was founded on Judeo-Christian values, and that the Jewish people, we have much to learn with regards to the closeness of family, respect for each other, and really looking at those values of empathy and as part of that process. And that is also a part of our capabilities in the curriculum. So we're looking at our personal and social capability. The other one is that William Cooper's story was so good to tell, similar to In My Pocket, where we've got it for upper primary, lower primary. For William Cooper, we have it for middle primary, and we're looking at one in secondary. There is so much information that is there about William Cooper's life, and important understandings for children to make in terms of his understanding and empathy with the Jewish people because of the plight of his people, because of the plight of his people being outsiders, having such a difficult time to be accepted socially, politically, in education, in all spheres of society. William Cooper's heart really linked with the Jewish people and all of the, the hatred that they went through in their land. So that's really exploring that at a much deeper level for the secondary students. In the units, I've been very purposeful in this because as I explained to our team, we want teachers to engage and be excited about these units at a school leadership level and at a teacher level. And these units needed to look like what schools are familiar with. So it's built each one according to the inquiry process of learning, which is by an educationalist named Kath Murdoch. Teachers are familiar with the inquiry process in learning about history and social science. So I've used that framework. So we look at tuning into the topic. So with the 5-6 unit, what are these terms we need to understand about the story of Dorothy? What does it mean to be an immigrant versus a migrant? What does it mean to migrate? All of these sort of terms we're bringing out of the book, as well as anti-Semitism. Then we go deeper into understandings about empathy, education, looking at strategies to teach about empathy, making a decision. What's my stand on this? Okay, you need to be standing along this continuum in the classroom. In this corner is I'm against this. In this other corner, I'm for this. In this corner, I'm not sure. And in this other corner, I need more information. We need to be building up children's capability to say, well, actually, I'm not really sure how I feel about Dorothy's position. And they might say things like, that's never happened to me, So that's then an open door for exploration by the teacher in the class to go on a learning journey together. And I mentioned that in each unit, the teachers are to go on this journey with their students. That makes it so much more powerful. Not the children are learning and they're just setting it up, but we want their hearts to transform as well about this. There are explicit links made to the Australian curriculum. For schools to consider this as a rigorous curriculum, it needs to expressly link to the curriculum, and those links are made throughout. There are also going to be overviews for teachers to see how the Year 1 and 2 unit will link with the 5 and 6 one, and how we build on learning about anti-Semitism through those different year levels. I'm just having a look here. I think I've just about mentioned everything. So there are various videos uploaded both from Eli and Jill and others I found about the kinder transport, so they can actually hear these real life biographies about other children that are now, of course, elderly adults, but about their journey on the kinder transport so they can discuss it as well. So that it's a lot of ability for them to have their thinking expanded beyond Dorothy to other adults, elderly adults that were children on the kinder transport as well. So I think that might be enough from me, Barbara and Norman, if that's okay.
Thank you
Well,
so
thank
very
you.
much. That was absolutely wonderful, Shoshana, and it's great that you've
Pleasure.
spent that time doing the research to see what's happening around the world with anti-Semitism education and Holocaust education as well, and also how it relates to the age level of children. So it gives you a very solid foundation for building up those units. So we're really looking forward now to having some schools and teachers take on the pilot projects, and looking forward to a launch later this year. But I'm quite aware that time has marched on with us. So can we open it up now for questions? And if you could just put your hand up if you'd like to ask a question and who you would like to direct it to.
Show a little yellow hand. So,
Has anyone got their hand up? I can't see anyone with a hand up.
I've got a hand up.
Is that David, is it?
That's Eli. Can you hear me?
Eli, okay, all right. So you're going to ask a question, Eli?
I'm just going to ask a question of Shoshana because one of the comments she just wrote to us earlier on was about possibly connecting with the family or from children's point of view of connecting to somebody who is close to the story. Does
Thank
Shoshana
you,
want to say
Eli.
something about that? Because that was
Yes,
quite
I
powerful.
do. Thank you so much for reminding me. And yes, I had just had that conversation with Jill earlier this evening. What's exciting is that in an inquiry process, in the last phase, it's like you act in some way based on all the learning that you've done through the unit. So like in my pocket, you're painting that pocket. It's like the culminating activity, possibly can tie in with assessment. But this other one for me that really struck me straight away was if there was a way for the children in years 1 and 2 to either write, draw, send something to the grandchildren who are now adults of Dorothy Sim themselves personally to indicate their enjoyment of the story, what they've learned from the story, their reflection of the story. How marvelous would that be? And Jill and Eli were saying that yes, they've been in contact with a family member, and I'm I'm hoping now what she won't be too swamped, but it is certainly considered a really worthwhile activity for schools to do to, we think of pen pal writing. Well, this is actually corresponding with a family member directly related to Dorothy. They're so aware, not only aware of her story, they've lived her story all of their lives, knowing about it. And also, Eli and Jill, you've been there, you've gone and met the family. So how amazing would that be to have that as the main activity at the end of the unit? So thanks for reminding me.
So it has, just to endorse that, it has been very much um, a growing activity with the family. Initially they were cautious because they must probably have worked with people before, not in Australia, but elsewhere.
Mm,
And people hijack stories. And that's what the
mm,
beauty of this story is, that it's very focused on a little girl, on the simple story, and yet on each page, as you know, because you've now studied it, there's so much that comes out of each page. But
yes.
it's a truism of what you read and what you see. And the beautiful thing for us, having done so many schools now over the 2 years, and again, I'm not the speaker, I'm not the presenter, I just press the buttons, but is to see these little children, these 10-year-olds, pick up elements of the story and you're encouraging them to say, as Jill would say, what do you see in this picture? Because the art itself is fabulous. I'll speak to the two of you because I'm quite happy to share stuff with this audience here. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
Yes.
that's great. Thank you for that. And look, I just don't want to forget we've got Martine Jansen. She's asked a question, how is this program different to Holocaust education mandated in Victorian secondary schools from
Yes.
year 9 onwards? So
Okay.
who would like to answer that?
I don't know the answer,
Okay.
but I'd like to make a comment. The comment is that because we have a Holocaust Center in Perth as well. Okay, so there's one in Brisbane, Sydney, Melbourne, and Perth, but the one in Melbourne most probably would be in the forefront because of the amount of Holocaust survivors that settled in Victoria. Okay, and in so many people's lives, we're Jewish, but we're not children or grandchildren of Holocaust survivors. Okay, we are Litvaks from South Africa. And the point I want to make is that this story is beautiful because it brings out the things that you need to know without engaging the Holocaust directly. And that is what the stepping stone is still saying in my ear. And that is why we've been allowed in Western Australia to engage schools through the principal. We have to write to them, etc. So we can't just go in there. But the fact is that we've been allowed to engage in the story because it is the escape from danger. This is our own version, okay? And this is not where we're headed with anti-Semitism. But what I'm saying to you is that is the first, our stepping stone. And what you're doing is we're taking the story and we're now building it up to another level. Yes? So
Yes,
that's the way I
exactly.
see that.
Thank you for
Okay.
that. And Shoshana, would you like to also comment?
Yes, please. Thank you. I just wanted to say that the research, current research, contemporary research really makes quite a distinction because historically, like in the past, teachers who have been teachers of Holocaust education, anti-Semitism is a very small component of it. It is mainly to do with the actual event of the Holocaust. Now, in our primary curriculum, that does not come into play. It comes into play as an option in the secondary part of history in the curriculum. So what the research is saying, how can we make the biggest impact in children in terms of them becoming our future, with a future's perspective, a future's focus as future adults? The biggest way we can do it is by looking at anti-Semitism contemporarily. There's a historical approach to anti-Semitism through the Holocaust and through Holocaust education. They're saying that because that's a moment in time, and it's not diminishing it, and hear what I'm saying, it's not diminishing it, but because it's a moment in time, it was treated by teachers as if almost that was back then, but this is now. And they missed the opportunity to actually explore anti-Semitism that has continued out of that. What the research is saying is no, treat now this contempt, and this is before October 7 happened. A lot of this research was in 2020 and onwards up to October 7. But they're saying in order to deal with anti-Semitism, particularly now head on, it needs to be a contemporary approach. It needs to be actually that this is your problem and my problem. That the Jewish people, that they are the victims, and we have to be careful we're not the perpetrators. And so what does hate look like? What does hate speech look like? What do acts of hatred look like? So we need to unpack it for them. And this is aside from Holocaust education. It's not saying, that was not important. It has a definite place in history and in study of that in the secondary levels, but certainly in primary levels where we want to actually cause that sensitization in their hearts. And schools are already doing so much in empathy education with kids regarding fair treatment of others and regarding, respect for others. But this takes it to another level where we look at just because something is different doesn't mean to say that it is wrong or bad, but let's explore and see how there is beauty in what we can learn about the life of Jewish people. Does that answer the question?
Well, I just have a comment from my point of view is that I think one of the issues has been is that besides us and besides you guys, Shoshana, okay, people seem to tackle this problem in the same way as they've done before. Nothing is new has come through. And this is what I see what
Yeah.
you've done with this. And that's the thing that we
Yeah.
need to certainly get across to the big players out there. I mean, in the last few days, somebody has been able to raise $300 million out of nothing because he's very well known. But I can guarantee you, unless we get hold of this guy and talk to him, and that's Frydenberg, I'm telling you who it is, unless he and his team, and he's got a big team there of high flyers and very important people, unless they see it in the new way that you've introduced us to, they're going to fall into the same traps again. So it has to be regarded in a new light. And that's what you.
Yes, and thank
Yeah,
you for that.
exactly.
And look, we've got two people waiting, Sylvie and then Amanda. So we'll come to them at the moment. I just want to quickly say I think it's really important that we're going to be looking at the contemporary aspects of anti-Semitism in Australia as well through this, bringing it in gently, but and at a relatable level to the child development of the children. But it's a current problem, and we need to emphasize that it's not something that happened in history with the Holocaust. That's happened and incredibly important to know about it, but we need to know what's happening in our nation now and have our children sensitized to it, know what's anti-Semitism, what's not, and be able to call it out at their level. I just wanted to mention too that a couple of years ago, Eli asked me to write a handbook on the Holocaust, education handbook on the Holocaust. Basically, it's aimed at adults and upper secondary, and it does include anti-Semitism education activities in it as well. And that's a free resource on the We Are Here website. So over to Sylvie and then followed by Amanda.
Look, thank you very much for tonight's amazing Zoom, sharing the information. I guess what you're doing is you're teaching children to be upstanders and not bystanders in a way that, as you say, is so relatable and simply gentle and caring. And that's what we need. That's what all the schools need. I mean, that's what children need. And it's starting young. And that's where it all needs to come from, as hopefully the parents will learn as well, maybe from their children and their young children. So thank you very much. I mean, it's outstanding and it's awesome. And I wish you all the very best with it.
Thanks. Thanks, Sylvie. And hopefully the teachers will learn as well. So over to Amanda, and then I can see that Shoshana wants to comment. We'll just hear from Amanda first.
Hi, amazing, everybody, what they're doing. I just want to kind of throw it out there. Couple of points from Shoshana and from Eli that, this idea that we're victims. I think that, where Eli says, we've got to
Can you speak
reframe
a bit
it.
louder? Thanks, Amanda.
Can you hear me?
Yeah,
Need
that's
to
better.
be a bit louder.
I'm saying that, when talking about reframing it, I think that it's very important that we stop talking about ourselves as victims. Shoshana mentioned that, to teach the children that we're victims and it's contemporary and it's not just the Holocaust. I personally think that she also said about, teaching people about the light that we have. I think fundamentally children don't hate. They naturally just, see each other as equals and will play with anyone. They're taught. It's not a natural thing for them to hate. I had a child when I was 8 years old at school in the UK, nearly 60 years ago, tell me I was a Jewish pig. And when I said, why do you say that? She said, well, my father told me Jews are pigs. So, I think that, first of all, I don't think that teaching children that we're victims, Jews are victims, is necessarily helpful. And I think that, reframing it that we are just children, we're people and like everybody else, and to stop making us be different, to stop playing the victim and having the Holocaust sort of thing hanging over our heads. And yes, to show people that we are a light unto the nations or whatever, but then, not that we're special or anything else, that we're like God's people, like any other children. I think it's really, really important just to make us be more, like everybody else. And that, this separation and divisiveness doesn't really help. So yes, sharing stories about Jewish children, but framed in such a way that it could be any children, and no child should hate on any other child or discriminate against any other child. I mean, it's basic stuff that's been going on for decades, about color, race, religion, language, accents, whatever it is. So I don't know, just for me personally anyway, maybe other people don't feel this way, but do you all feel like using the word victim around Jewish people is really beneficial?
Can I answer
Or-
after Shoshana? Because Shoshana
Yeah.
wants to say something.
Yeah.
Yes, so we've got Shoshana next, and then we've got Eli. And I want to let you know there's also been a question in the chat from someone that either of you might like to address that says, how do we get this into schools in Western Sydney where it's really needed? Probably some of those schools are Muslim schools that anyway might be hard to penetrate, but there would be some state schools at least. So Shoshana and then Eli, thank you.
No, it's not.
You're muted, Shoshana.
Oh, there we go.
Thank you, Sylvie and Amanda. I just wanted to, Sylvie, firstly to say you brought up a very good point about parents and community education. And certainly there is a role for that when it's a journey of learning for not only the class, the teachers, but the school, that schools would then, in their context, and someone brought up a very good point, what about homeschoolers? What about School of the Air? Yes, schools are used to, and I worked in a school most recently where most of their children were distance education. They still used curriculum units like which we're producing and using them in those different contexts. So it's still highly appropriate. But Sylvie, it's a very good point about community education as well. And schools will find a way. They're always educating their parents about different aspects of their learning, and I would see this as no different. It's contentious, yes. It possibly has a lot of ways that they would need to deal with it. But again, people's real life stories are powerful, and maybe that could be used in that situation as a way for anyone who has in their family a Holocaust survivor, or someone else who can relate to the situation and have some first hand experience, be able to share that in the community. So thank you for bringing that up. And Amanda, just I need to be very careful in how I say this, but what I'm reporting on is in the research. In our current units, the terms victims and perpetrator have not been used. However, interestingly, the research talks about literally also altering the mindset of those Jewish people and Jewish children affected to not view themselves as victims either. And, it's a very complex, isn't it? Has so many different layers to it. But I was reporting on the research, to be honest with you, not what's in our units. But, in any playground, in any school, they have an anti-bullying program, and it will deal with those who are bullied, those who were the perpetrator, those who were the victims, and they work with the children to actually understand the different voices each person had, each of their perspectives, and then they help them as part of that reconciliation and those conversations to help repair the relationships. So actually, it's a very familiar environment in schools in looking at that. So I get your point. We're not saying Jewish people are the victims, and we're not saying everybody else is the perpetrators, but the research uses that language as a way to unpack the complexity of the psychological issues with anti-Semitism and what it does. So, for example, with the perpetrators, the paranoia regarding, the enviousness of the Jewish people. It might even be their wealth. It might be the closeness of their families and the stereotypes they're applying to that. That was sort of what the research was talking about. In terms of victims, it was talking about, the Jewish people in their communities being built up with their voice and being built up with being, their group of people that are valid in their own right, and that they have their plan, their purpose, in this universe, like every other people group does. So I don't believe it's actually necessarily pointing them out to be better than anybody else, but certainly this whole issue is a paranoia, and the Jewish people don't get it. Well, when I looked at the research, they don't understand why, but it has been happening from the beginning of time, the beginning of time. And for my position is, as I've read in the Bible, they are God's treasured possession, for me, it's like, okay, they carry values that our society was initially based on, values of family, values of love, values of mateship. Every time I go to Israel, I see it firsthand. I've lived there and seen it firsthand. Are they perfect people? No, there's no perfect people group on this planet. But I certainly thank you, Amanda, because I want to be sure that I am articulating exactly the understandings that have been read in the research. And so thank you for challenging and for asking. That's what we're here for. And this is the nature of building curriculum. It needs to be challenged, and it needs to be talked about as to what the approach will be. So thank you,
I'd just like to
Amanda.
throw out one other idea. You talk about the so-called perpetrator being paranoid. I mean, from a more holistic perspective, they're actually the victims because they're full of hate and they're full of, confusion and paranoia. And actually, that makes them the victims. Jewish people, we know we're an eternal people. We know we have God on our side. And we know that we'll be here. Okay, some of us will die in the process, but we will be here as long as, the world exists. So, we have a lot of faith. We have a lot of resilience. We're far from victims. Whereas those, I pray all the time for those with so much hatred in their heart, that they find some way of, not being a victim of that, not being a victim of the indoctrination, of the gaslighting, of the brainwashing. I see them as the
I
victims.
understand where you're going there, because even those two nurses now from Bankstown are seeing themselves as victims, even though really they were the perpetrators of that anti-Semitic outburst. We'll just go to Eli because Eli's been waiting to say something there.
Thank you very much, Barbara. I just wanted to say the beauty of this book as it stands and as we've run it is that it's simple, and we've kept it simple from how we relate the story. If you look at the page, and I'll share this with you, but if you look at a page, this is a double page. The art is beautiful. There's very little text there, okay? But the amount of interpretation that 10-year-old kids come out on their own, having just been read that page, because that's how Jill does it, page by page, okay? The interpretation is amazing. And what we're saying here is you take a simple story, you keep it simple, and you let the kids work through it themselves in 2 hours with the artwork that builds on this whole concept of the story, of a true story. I have to emphasize, we don't complicate it. We keep it as it is, and that works. And that's why when you see these 10-year-old kids come into a classroom, they know they're going to have an incursion, okay? And they sit there and have to listen to Jill talk for about 40 minutes with the story of the family and all that. But once they get into the arts and they have to interpret what they've just learned, that is amazing. And everybody is different. Everyone's unique. That's why someone like Picasso said that is the best age, okay? Because every child is an artist. You try that with a 13, 14-year-old, forget about it.
They must be more cynical.
They're cynical, they're not interested. And that is why I'm going to put my foot out here or whatever. That is why this can be so much more powerful than a Holocaust center for 15-year-olds who are going in there with preconceived ideas. Okay. And that's why what Amanda said about changing the narrative, that's what we're doing here. We're working with with specialists, especially Shoshana, who understands what it is. I don't understand. Jill's a high school teacher, but between all of us, I think we're trying our best to get this across to the marketplace, and that's what we have to convince the big machas, the big people with the big monies, with the big mouths, with the people that are on TV. Like this week, we're going to have Shari with all her experts. And I'm not saying what do they know, but what do they know? Okay, thank you.
Yes, thank you for that. And yes, this is a project that has no funding, and Shoshana's working voluntarily, and we are very grateful for that. And we're very grateful for the advice and input from Eli and Jill as well. And of course, Norman and I are working voluntarily on the project as well. So I see Sylvie's got her hand up there again. Over to Sylvie.
Yeah, sorry, I know we're running late. The power of a graphic novel is absolutely phenomenal. Even at my age, I love reading a graphic novel. And I'd imagine right through the secondary school as well, teenagers would love it. I mean, the power of the art as compared to the written word, I just find fairly awesome. And that's what Eli was talking about when he showed that sheet. I mean, there was some writing down the bottom, but what you saw was the children holding hands and dancing. I mean, that's what I focused on. And the beautiful, the kindness, and the community, and the circle as well, because circles are indicative of community, whether it's Christian, Jewish, whoever. It's a circle coming together. Really very powerful.
And I just even want to say in that double page, one of the kids, we didn't pick it up, but it was sometime last year, said, "Oh, I've noticed the wall changes color. It goes from a dark color on the left-hand side to brightness." And then Jill said, "Well, what do you think that represents?" And she said, "Well, that's coming from Germany, from the background, from the horror, from everything." It was fabulous that this kid told us about what this art was doing, okay? And we've used that now. You know what? It's fabulous.
No, that's wonderful. And look, before we go on, I do want to acknowledge Miriam, who's joined us from Israel, who's on here with us too. So it's wonderful to have you, Miriam. I know that we are well over time.
Do you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, this has been fabulous.
Feel free to say something, and I know
I'll tell
Amanda
you.
wants to speak again. Yes.
Did
you want to say something, Miriam?
You see my scarf, right? Do you know how long I've been wearing this? Since you can hear me?
Yes.
Yes, we can hear you. Yes.
I've been wearing it's all in raggedy because I bought this and I got this like 1 or 2 days after the 7th of October, and I'm so tired of wearing it. So pray that they'll really pay attention to Trump, this threat that they all need to come back. I say amen, 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 and they really all have to come back because there'll be already too many in boxes. We realize that, Okay, so just pray. But this has been a wonderful presentation. I've stuck with it. I'm getting a little sleepy. I need to have lunch. But anyway, it's been wonderful. I say just kol hakavod, all the honor. I think it's absolutely fabulous, the whole idea. And I hope people will support it. I hope that all the money and even double and triple and that this program will be actually in Israel, we're quite good on these kind of programs already. Because when Holocaust, day comes in school, even the little ones, they, tone it down for them, but they are all aware in Israel. There's no such thing as a child in a public school not aware of this subject. But thank you, thank you.
Thank you
Thank
so
you
much
for
for that.
recognizing me.
Now, we are very well over time. We have to finish soon. We've got Amanda with her hand up. And then apart from the speakers, we'll only take one more person after Amanda. So Amanda, would you like to go ahead?
I just want to say one last thing. Don't give up on the teens. About 20 odd years ago, we organised in Sydney listening circles for 200 16-year-olds from Christian, Muslim and Jewish schools that had always only been in their own specific schools. So they'd not really mixed before. And we sat down, I think I had maybe a dozen facilitators we trained. And we sat down, we did listening circles with them with I questions, because you can't tell them, you have to, make them come up with it from themselves. So we had I questions about identity and how they see themselves and perceive themselves and so on. And it was amazing. They were all aware that they were about to maybe go to university and would be integrating with different people, and they'd only been in their own isolated communities. Some of the Muslim kids didn't tell their parents where they were coming, even though it was a school organized event, because they didn't think they'd be allowed to come. And we also did a circle for the teachers. It was very interesting because the teachers came in to the different rooms where the circle was to watch. And I said to them, I'm sorry, it's not an observer's thing. If you want a circle, I'll organize a circle for you, but you can't stand in and watch. Well, they took offense, a lot of them, because teachers don't like being told what to do, right? And so some of them got really quite huffy and thought I had way too much chutzpah. And anyway, in the end, it was very interesting. About half of them just got the knock and walked off, and half of them decided they'd come to a circle. So the circle was on the floor. So they all pulled up chairs, and I told them, you can't have a chair, you have to sit on the floor. If you want to experience what we're doing, then do it, we'll do it properly. Some of them couldn't sit on the floor anymore, which I think is already a problem. Anyway, we did a circle with the teachers. And I have to tell you, it was profound. It was profoundly insightful. It was a bit scary in some levels of their ignorance and their lack of awareness, but it changed them all. They all came out of it really with a big aha, of stuff that they really had no idea about. So the 16-year-olds were amazing. And I just want to also say that the teenagers that go on March of the Living, who aren't only Jewish, also have, and I know we're back to the Holocaust again, but I'm just saying, please don't give up on teenagers, okay? That's all. I just wanted to share that.
Okay.
And thank you.
That's a wonderful contribution there, Amanda. Thank you for that. Look, it's almost 8 o'clock. We've well, our time here in Cairns anyway. So we've been going about 2 hours. We started a little bit late because people were late coming on. But unless you've got anything you really need to say, Shoshana or Jill and Eli, we might need to end now. Was there anything urgently that you needed to say?
Oh, no, just thanks to everybody for their for joining in and for their contribution, and wonderful. Look forward to others joining us again when we discuss this work, the project. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you everybody for listening. And we hope we can be in touch. If you know any teachers who'd like to do our In My Pocket, because we haven't started yet with Shoshana's, but our version, please get in touch with us.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Absolutely, yes. Please get in touch with Jill and Eli for In My Pocket. And also, if you can help in any way to link us in with teachers or schools so that we can start doing the pilot study for our school anti-Semitism project, that would be wonderful. All right then. So we just want to thank you so much for joining us, for listening, for your questions and comments. And we just want to, I'll hand over to Norman to thank the speakers again.
Well, what a smorgasbord, more than the smorgasbord certainly you've had. So I want to thank Barbara. I want to thank Jill and
Eli.
Jill and Eli, and also Shoshana. We've truly been blessed with wonderful, gifted speakers, and how we can all make those changes and importantly make a difference, because we know that education is certainly the key. So thank you for all the work that you've put into of making this night such a groundbreaking night, I believe. Thank you to Lillian Smith and also John Grimraid for your help there as well, and to each one that's come on for holding this timeline on your calendar. I think it was such a blessing to not only have friends but meet new friends tonight. So do stay in touch, and shalom, each one of you.
Shalom,
Blessings.
shalom.
Um,
Hello. Thank
Good
you.
night.
Shalom and thank you.